Pudgy Penguins story started off with just a phone call. So about 4 years ago, I get a call from my childhood best friend and business partner across a bunch of different ventures, Luca, and he calls me asking if I would be willing to basically invest and help acquire this company called Pudgy Penguins. Now, at the time, I had no idea what Pudgy Penguins was. I wasn't even in the NFT space. I was building my own companies, my own creative studio, and so I already had a lot going on at that time. And Luca calls me and says, look, like, I want to buy this IP. There really isn't any like immediate plan. We just need to come in, take over the company, instill a lot of confidence in all the early supporters, and really try to make the best of this business. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like, what's needed? He's like, aside from the capital injection, I really want to use your creative studio's kind of credibility and your background to show that, hey, not only we're coming in to acquire this company, but we're also bringing in people who have a lot of field expertise in kind of building and shaping creative-led companies. And so I was like, all right, cool, let's make it happen. And that's how this story got started. So a little backstory on who I am. I'm a 29-year-old entrepreneur. I have built several different businesses ranging from CPG to e-commerce, and my last recent venture before Pudgy Penguins was a creative studio called Bureau. And so I've always been a very creative-led person. I've always used creativity as a kind of a strategic lens to overcome a lot of challenges. Growing up, I was raised in Los Angeles, born originally from born in Moscow, Russia. Made my way over to US when I was 8 years old and basically was raised in LA the whole time. The first couple of years living in Los Angeles, it was pretty cool. Like, had a whole new change of scenery, a whole new life, getting accustomed to the American culture, also picking up the English language was also a huge, difficult feat for me. But the first couple of years was pretty cool. And what ended up happening was my mom and dad got separated 2 years in, and it just completely went downhill. So growing up in LA with a welfare single mom, we had a lot of challenges, and we, you know, had bounced around a lot of places. I remember the 16 years that I was raised in Los Angeles, we would move 12 times. Out of the 12 times, six of which we were evicted. And so, at an early age, I remember like just coming home, seeing my mom super stressed out about bills and making ends meet. And to me, instinctively, I was like, how can I help? Like, what can I do to support the family? And so at a very early age, I remember like right before I entered middle school, I started like really getting conditioned about like what it's like to get into the real world and just support your family and by any means necessary providing. And so I really kind of started getting conditioned to think about the world through that lens. And school was kind of like a secondary focus to me, and really figuring out like how are we going to make ends meet. And so I remember like at the age of like 13, basically start helping my mom out. She was a chef in Los Angeles. She had a catering company actually. And, we had to do a lot of catering jobs. We're talking like working really insane hours, having to wake up at 4 in the morning, head to the kitchen, basically debone like 1,000 chickens, do like, peel like 100 onions or something like that. It was a very labor intensive kind of role, especially, as a young kid. This is what you're having to do on your summer breaks. It was like absolutely like the most brutal kind of experience one could imagine. And I remember over the course of the 16 years that I lived there, the 12 times that we moved, six of which we continuously got evicted. As I was in high school, I vividly remember us getting evicted from an apartment building, and we didn't really have a place to move to right away. The only immediate solution that we had was like just finding a U-Haul truck that we can just put all of our shit into and just book a Motel 6. And we would book a Motel 6 right next to my school just so the commute is a lot easier, because my mom had to, make her way towards work. She had to drop off my younger brother, and I would have to walk to school, or in many instances I would have to take a couple buses. I remember I would sleep in this U-Haul truck, and my mom and my brother and my smaller dog, they would be sleeping in a motel. And the only reason why I slept in the cabin of a U-Haul truck was because we had a big dog. And so I would sleep in this cabin. I would put a bunch of clothes on the curtains, on the windows, and I would sleep with this boxer breed that I had at the time. And I remember just like waking up in the morning, I had people like knocking on the doors, like trying to pull the doors open, because living in LA, it was like super unsafe as well. And I remember, just kind of like waking up like 20, 30 times a month. Also, it gets super humid, like living in this like cabin with a dog just like panting and breathing so much in your face. And I remember like one time I like get up right before school, I leave the cabin, I take the dog upstairs, try to like finesse it and hide it from the staff that worked the motel. I remember a kid saw me hopping out, a kid that recognized me that I went to school, out of the cabin to head to the hotel room. And that was like the most embarrassing moment of my life, or one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And just going to school that day, I was like absolutely miserable because I had this like fear of like somebody saying, "Oh, hey, I saw Peter jumping out of a U-Haul truck, like he's super poor," whatever they would make up about me. I worked retail jobs, I worked construction jobs, restaurants, back of house, front of house. I was a chef, I was a dishwasher, whatever I can do to make ends meet. And by the age of 16, I took an official job working for Club Monaco, was a brand that was built by Ralph Lauren. And I was one of the early employees. I actually helped them build a store in Beverly Center. And I was an outstanding salesman at the time. I broke every single store record. I was very charismatic and I really wanted to excel at the job. But the problem is working the corporate ladder, you don't really have the opportunity to grow, and like nobody really takes you serious as a kid. And so I vividly remember like one time I was working at the store and somebody called and they asked for me, and it was Celine, and they basically called the store to poach me to come work for them. And I was like, why do you guys want me? The person that was there during the store opening, she really liked my charisma for some reason, was like, hey, your product knowledge, your brand knowledge is so awesome, like you should come work for us. I ended up not taking a Celine job, but working for Christian Louboutin at the time. And I was the youngest corporate employee to ever work for Christian Louboutin at the time. And that's when I started making my connects. I started making connections with, people that come from very affluent backgrounds who had, their own stories, their own backgrounds, and, their own things that they were doing. And I was always so super infatuated by it. I was like, what do you guys do? Like, you're buying $2,000 shoes. Like, what do you do for a living? And so some of the guys in the space ended up saying like, hey, I'm deep in the fashion industry, like get my number, whatever. I ended up getting a contact from a guy who was interning for this pretty well-known designer named Chaz Jordan. I ended up interning for the guy who built an incredible atelier. It was a garment manufacturing studio in Los Angeles. He produced his own brand that was pretty well known at the time. And just me seeing that for the first time, I was like, man, I could really do this. And he opened up all his books and told me exactly how he's sourcing fabrics, how he's dealing with textile mills, and all these awesome things that he's doing for his clients. And I remember I wanted to do the exact same thing for myself, but I didn't have a lot of patience just because I was like, dude, I need to figure out how to do this for myself quickly. And it's so serendipitous how the world works. I meet these pretty well-off kids who basically were like, look, like we really love everything that you're doing. And at the time I saw them as an opportunity to like maybe kind of invest into what I wanted to do. And I put this business plan together and I told them, hey, I'm trying to build this like atelier in Los Angeles, no minimum garment manufacturing. And this is like at the age of like 16 and a half at this point. And I was like, I want to build this company and I want to run it. And I think I could be really successful just because I already have attained so many contacts and resources. And so they were like, man, this is like super dope. They were also super deep in fashion. So I feel like this was like a natural extension of their interests as well. And I ended up raising $150,000 from them. They ended up backing me. They ended up kind of backing my ambitions. And I built this amazing atelier, which is basically a Parisian way of saying a studio. It's a workshop. And out of that studio, we were doing no minimum garment manufacturing. We were doing mass production. We were doing tech packs. We were developing patterns. We were grading and we were sourcing fabrics. Like anybody who had an idea of like building a brand, they could come to me because they didn't have to go out there and source a factory that then required minimums of like 500 to 1,000. So I really saw a void and I really saw a niche in the LA community of aspiring entrepreneurs who didn't really have the capital. And I wanted to fill that void very quickly. And so we open up the studio and it becomes a hit. I mean, the network effects that came from that alone of people being like, yeah, yo, this is like a really sick studio. I had like the palm trees. I had like 3 sewing machines, a pattern table, like it was very like high end positioned. And a lot of people like really took to it and they were like, hey, we want to come to you and we want to, sample some prototypes. I ended up attracting people from Manhappy, from Rude, from Opening Ceremony. I was doing merchandising printing for a couple seasons for Antisocial Social Club. I was doing some merchandising printing for No More Parties in LA by Kanye West. So I was like very deeply integrated into the LA fashion scene while having my own studio. The problem with that was I was at that point already turning 17. I never really understood the finance side or the operational side of running the business. So I made a lot of mistakes to a point where like I was paying my salaries and I had a bunch of employees and I was barely breaking even, But I didn't know that breaking even and having all that growth trajectory is like a positive signal. What I took it as is like a sign of failure. Like, I'm not distributing dividends to my investors. I can't go raise additionally. Again, that's all the things I didn't know early on. And so what ended up happening was my investors, who also didn't really come from like a business background, so they themselves couldn't even contribute from an advisory perspective outside of capital, basically started coming to me and they were like, hey, we're not seeing the dividends. Like, you're kind of in a position where you need more money. And I was like guilt shamed to absolute oblivion. Like, I didn't know that I could go and raise again and I can inject more capital so long as I'm showing consistent signs of growth. And so what ended up happening was we had a fallout. It wasn't like a crazy fallout where we're not talking anymore or something. Like, they were just like, look, like, we can't support this anymore. I felt like absolute shit. And I basically just dismantled the business, sold the business for parts, and just like that, it disappeared. And so the biggest learning that I had was like, the age factor, right? Just not having that wherewithal about operationally how to run the business, and just maybe not having the confidence to like relate to them and say, look, like, I'm growing, I need more capital, it's totally okay. But anyways, shortly after, I fell into like a perpetual depression state. I was super stressed out because I was like, man, I'm gonna be on the streets again, right? Like, I'm gonna have to sleep in a U-Haul situation. Like, I made a mistake of dropping out of high school at ninth grade, basically, to pursue this entrepreneurial journey. And the problem back in the day was, it's not like where it's today, right? Where you can literally become a clipper, you can use AI to your advantage, you can do commerce. Those kind of things weren't readily available, right? It was like, get a degree, go to college, go to high school, and then align yourselves with a career that ends up paying you a lot over a long-term period. And so I kind of shot myself in the foot, and it always put me in a position where I had my back against the wall and I really had to figure things out. So then, coming from an entrepreneurial highs, I was like, man, I'm gonna be so successful. I ended up getting a job, and I ended up getting sales jobs. I was working in boiler rooms as a closer, and I was selling real estate agents on Google placement, which is like an insane feat of its own. Like, imagine calling somebody and being like, look, I have Google placement for you. You can rank #1 for these keywords of like, top homes in like Beverly Hills or something. So it was like a very schemy kind of boiler room sales floor right in 90210 district. Stunning office, free ice creams, all that shit, real commission, high commission for sales that you closed. And, just because of like my entrepreneurial background, like, I kind of started understanding how the world worked a little bit. And then I ended up breaking sales records at that job because, again, of like, I don't know what it was. It was like this charisma, this energy, this willingness to like just go super, super hard. And so from there, it didn't really turn out, as well as I thought it would. I mean, it was like you just sitting in a cubicle every day and making calls. Like, talk about blowing your brains out and just like not wanting to work there ever again. And so again, I was just trying to get out. I started working side jobs, doing creative stuff, graphic design, merchandise designing, but I ended up working for really bad people that didn't really value me. A year later, Luca calls me and he's like, hey, I'm doing this e-commerce stuff for the influencer named Supreme Patty. I want to bring your creative flair and really start helping with the website design, the graphics, like really make it look like a proper brand. So I came in and did that job really well. I boosted conversions to, I believe they were hitting like sub 1% conversions. I remember instantly seeing it shoot up to 5% conversions, which was like an insane metric goal to hit. And that to me said something which was like, I can bring my creative background to other industries, right? And the other industry was e-commerce, right? Fashion didn't pay, didn't work out. Though I have a lot of affinity for the fashion industry and I still have a lot of relationships, like, it just was not paying enough, right? But I saw this e-commerce thing where you can make money while you're sleeping and you can apply your creative flair and just make things look official and real. And so from there, I ended up, helping Luca, and then we basically started working together consistently. We started traveling around with Supreme Patty. We moved to Miami. We built this content house. We were working with Nelk. We were working with the Jake Pauls of the world, Jay Alvarez. I mean, you name it. And we were just building these brands, selling consumer products at the wazoo. A year goes by, and we end up, Luca and I basically get smoked on the deal. We wanted to build a brand for Jake Paul. He was like super into it. It was a jewelry line for his Team 10 YouTube click. And we did really, really well in the early days, but Jake didn't have the heart for it, especially for, the percentage that he had in the company. And he was also kind of dealing with his downfalls as well. So just talk about bad timing. We overinvested into inventory. I mean, we were spread super thin when it came to it. And I was like, man, am I running into another failure here? Like, this is really bad. And I also didn't want to depend on my friends to figure it out as well. So I ended up moving to Miami. Like literally as soon as we shut down the company, I moved to Miami, and being in Miami, I was like, man, this is a breath of fresh air. This is a new place, a place that I haven't seen before. I feel like it's kind of like being an immigrant coming from another country, into United States. Suddenly opportunities become abundant. So I get down to Miami. All of a sudden I have this like this inkling to like spark up that entrepreneurial journey again. I randomly meet this guy who I was renting an apartment from, who basically started this tech company called Bring It, which was a luggage delivery service. Think of it as like Uber for your bags. You're on your way to the airport, you can send your bags there, we'll check it in for you, and then when you land at your destination, we'll pick up the bags and we'll take them to a hotel or a destination of your choice. So I ended up coming in as a co-founder, marketer, basically help them with the branding, help them with the positioning, help them tell that story, and also started to apply a lot of the marketing tactics that I have learned in the e-commerce world. We end up raising a couple $1 million, and COVID comes and it just completely shuts down the travel industry, right? And I'm just like, oh my God, another bad beat, right? Like how many more bad beats can I take? But the thing is I was in such a new environment, and I just like had this hunch. I was like, man, maybe I need to lean into my creative roots a little bit more. Like, what does that mean? It means that I can come in and bring my creative expertise, right? From strategizing to branding to websites to whatever, identities, like you name it, and basically offer that as a service. And because of my e-com roots, I had a lot of friends in the drop shipping world that were basically drop shipping these products that needed that service. So I didn't really need to go out there and look for clients. I just shot a couple texts. People had confidence in me and they knew that I was really good at my craft. And I was like, hey, I can do this for you. I'm starting a creative studio. And in this creative studio, I'd basically offer the suite of services. And I ended up bringing a co-founder slash partner who was an absolute 3D whiz, Blake. And him and I, just two-man army, basically started producing 3D renderings for CPG brands. And we were amongst one of the first studios to do that during the CPG boom. This is like right during COVID, where like all CPG brands started exploding. Valuations were through the roof. And we ended up taking a two-man team to a 40-man team in about 16 months. And we did everything from websites to packaging to branding to, visuals to photography. We were shooting commercials. And I was like, man, this is like, it was a sign, right? It was a sign that I can do this for others. I learned so much. We were building brands for fintech companies, CPG, wellness, beauty, you name it. And we were doing everything from, the 3D renderings to even helping them with A/B testing funnels and like really getting immersed into that world of like split testing content hierarchies and like using that data and those insights to apply them to their evergreen website. And so we learned so much throughout that process, and we grew a team. And, at this point, I was a super confident entrepreneur. Basically took a studio from $0 to seven figures, and I was completely stoked. And with that success, I started doing a lot of venture investing. Some brands came to me, and because I was coming from a place of confidence, I started selecting the kind of brands that I would work with. And some of the brands I did sweat equity exchanges because I was like, man, you're on a crazy rocket ship. Like, we want to strap on and we want to be as a partner for you. All that success just kind of kept compounding for the studio. And at that point, I had a lot of liquidity to play with. And so this is how we end up round tripping to a full circle moment when Luca gave me that call and said, hey, let's buy Pudgy Penguins. So now we get to the acquisition moment. None of us know what it takes to build Pudgy Penguins. Nobody even knows how to operate within this industry of NFTs. What we knew was that we can bring our experience of branding, of marketing, distribution, positioning to an industry that was just so new and so fresh with so much potential. And also NFTs, had a really beautiful story, right? The royalties alone could help capitalize the company, in perpetuity. We were super stoked, right? I came in, did the rebranding. I came in, helped with the repositioning. I was really kind of helping balancing the scales of the Web3 community needs with the intent of building a Web2 business off the backs of this insane cult-like community that we had, right? The early cohort, the tribe of people that were supporting Pudgy Penguins was the most beautiful element of how Pudgy Penguins came to be, because we had a community before we had product. And so a couple months go by after the acquisition, the royalties were kicking in, we started seeing some capital, the return on the investment. And so a couple months go by, royalties get slashed to zero, NFTs start taking a turn for the worst, and we're just put in this position of like, what do we do with this company, right? We have this super promising IP, so much potential, and a community like die-hard brand participants that are financially incentivized to see this company, this IP succeed. We're like, man, let's turn this into a real company. Like, let's get into the IP space. And so we ended up licensing the likeness of those NFTs from the people who own those assets and turning them into toys. And turning them into toys, we had huge ambitions to go into retail. And so we went to Walmart, right? We went to the likes of big box retailers and we were like, hey, are you guys down to pick this brand up? Why would they pick this brand up? We had zero content, zero distribution. Nobody really knows what this is. In the crypto world, this brand was pretty successful to some degree, or was at least known, right? But to the outside world, it really wasn't. And I remember this because listing our toys on Amazon was a pretty interesting moment. We already got turned down by Walmart, but we relied on the power of community to help us slingshot Pudgy Penguins' name into the top toy category within Amazon's marketplace. And that was simply because everybody in Web3, that crypto community, was galvanizing behind this moment. Finally, in this taboo industry of rug pulls and non-docs founders and just like complete extraction, these guys are actually giving this industry what it truly deserves. And because we licensed the likeness of those NFTs from the holders, every holder that we licensed from got a percentage of the toys that were sold. And that was the most insane, novel, kind of trailblazing opportunity that we were able to put together. And we leveraged that as a conversation starter back up with Walmart. We came back to Walmart and said, hey, on the contrary, we do have a community of people that really love this. Can you guys give a shot? And I remember Walmart saying, yes, we'll give you guys a go. We got rolled out in 2,500 Walmart locations via pallet program, which is almost unheard of for a brand new brand with no content, with no fan base, no familiarity, right? This thing just spawned out of nowhere in Walmart shelves. I mean, it was truly insane to see. And that was like one of the most like climatic moments for us to validate that this name, Pudgy Penguins, the IP, has something there that's truly special. And so from there, we started building the team, right? We started bringing in guys from the licensing space, from the retail space. We started bringing in real operation officers. We started bringing in guys who helped us with the sales, right? Of like really scaling this company. And at that time, we didn't have any characters that anybody can call by on a first name basis, right? And that was like one of the biggest technical and brand challenges that I had to overcome, which was like, what are we going to do to break out to the masses, to bring a lot of familiarity to the Pudgy Penguins IP? And that was by creating these two iconic characters, Pengu and Polly, and letting them be the heroes of our story to represent Pudgy Penguins as we break out to Web 2 masses, we call it. Couple months go in, we start split testing Instagram strategies. I mean, we were trying out all different techniques, right? We really looked at Pudgy Penguins on Instagram outside of Twitter as a content creator, right? Like what kind of content can Pudgy Penguins produce, right? That will garner a mass following, right? That will create those shares, those network effects. And we tried a lot of stuff. We tried positive affirmations. We tried, some relatability stuff. We tested a bunch of different penguins. And Pengu and Polly, the pink and blue penguins that we're known for the most, was kind of like an accidental success. We just tried because we also had a technical challenge in-house to use traits on penguins, and the way to animate them was very, very complicated. So we were like, look, let's do non-trait penguins, pink and blue, right? Guy and a girl, right? And see how that does. We started seeing insane shares. We started seeing insane views. I mean, we went from 100 to 200 to 500 to 1,000,000 views super quickly. And we started putting out content like 2-3 times a week just to satiate the audience that we started building. It took us a lot of time. I mean, we were throwing so much spaghetti at the wall. We were trying Giphies, we were trying Instagram, we were trying TikTok. I mean, we were trying everything under the sun. Outside of crypto success, we had this breakout moment for Pudgy Penguins in Web 2 via Instagram content. To date, Pudgy Penguins has amassed upwards of 250 billion impressions globally. Talk about brute forcing Pudgy Penguins into existence and not taking no for an answer. We had no idea what we were doing. Like, I'd never built an IP company like this before. Like, we were building the plane and we were flying it at the same time. All the while, we had this one thesis, which was make Pudgy Penguins the most famous penguin brand in the world. And with that statement alone, I remember last year we got hit with a cease and desist from Perry Ellis to basically not allow us to use the name Penguins on any merchandise. We're talking hats, socks, apparel, you name it. And we've gotten to a place where like big brands started taking us seriously. And with that statement alone, becoming the most famous penguin brand in the world, you kind of start stepping on other people's toes. These are some of the challenges that we're kind of dealing with even today while building the business. Because as you're getting bigger, the stakes are getting higher. Pudgy Penguins has about 100 people working with us, anywhere ranging from animations to product to content to HR to legal. I mean, this thing behind the scenes is a massive operation. We are waking up every single day to make our penguin IP the most famous penguin brand in the world. And every single day, we're running through challenges. Every day is a learning lesson. And man, the amount of times we get punched in the face, right, while building this business, especially when the stakes are so high, it's insane, right? And this is the kind of stress that I have never been able to deal with. I know what the stress is of living on the street. I know what the stress is of making ends meet. But now you have a different stress of you got to take care of your employees. You got to take care of your believers. The thesis still remains. We're still actively building, and we're really trying to push Pudgy Penguins to absolute new heights. Nowadays, specifically for myself and what I do, I'll sit in a bunch of product design sessions, and for this business, you're in the SKU variety game, right? You have to produce a bunch of different SKUs to satiate the needs of consumers across different categories. You have either consumables, you have toys, you have apparel, right? And even with the Perry Ellis lawsuit, like that completely created an Achilles heel in our apparel department because now we have to wait on the results of this lawsuit. So all we're doing is just doubling down on the actual, the physical goods, the keychains, the accessories, right? Where we have plans of doing a retail expansion via pop-up shops globally and working with factories to produce all of these different SKUs. The amount of revisions that go into place here. I mean, we very rarely get a first sample prototype that we're super stoked about. I mean, this is like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cycles to revise the product to make it what it is today, times the 50 to 60 different products we have to procure on an annually basis. I mean, this business literally started as like just an NFT project to now having to meet the demands of big box retailers and brand partnerships and licensing opportunities. I mean, there's so many moving pieces in this organization. And today I'm super thankful that I have a really big team supporting us. And so as part of our kind of go forward plans, I myself want to document the most uncensored version of the Pudgy Penguins building journey. I want to take you guys behind the scenes and show you how I'm building the brand through my lens. I know you guys seen the building in public journey. It just took a lot of time and production effort for us to put this together. But as we're all kind of getting into our respective roles here, I really want to take you guys behind the scenes and see how we are going to take Pudgy Penguins into a billion-dollar IP brand. It may not happen tomorrow, may not happen next year, but I can guarantee you with certainty off the backs of the confidence that we have and all the early indicators of success that we have, we are going to get there. And I'm super excited to show you guys what it's going to take to get there. Hopefully, some of the learning lessons that I have while building Pudgy Penguins, you guys can apply it to your everyday, operational challenges and things that you guys want to overcome. I'll just show you guys the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully you guys can use this to your advantage to either help you guys with going from 0 to 1, or where we're at right now, going from 1 to 100, which is a completely different beast. To be honest, like I've never been in this kind of business where you're just growing so fast and you have so many demands to meet, but I'm super excited to actually take people behind the scenes and document this process. So maybe like one day I, pull up open YouTube and I just take a look at, some of the accomplishments that we had.